double toil and trouble. Some topics discussed may make people uncomfortable. For fair is foul and foul is fair. On this podcast, we will definitely swear. A lot. Now round the cauldron go, trigger warnings listed in the notes below. Thrice and once the hedge pig whined, the cocktails cry, it's time, it's time.
By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Maiden, mother, crone. Plot twist, we're all the crone. The stories aren't all made up and the points don't matter.
Welcome listeners to The Weird Sisters, a podcast about the blurst and bizarre and all the things you were happier not knowing about.
It's day 1000 of quarantine.
I'm on day 105.
Are you really?
Yep.
It doesn't feel like it's been... It only
It's
feels
been
like it's
that-
maybe been 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's been that long for me. I've either been bedridden or in quarantine.
Oh, of course.
I'm counting my hospital time as quarantine.
No, that counts.
Well,
That
you were
totally
pretty
counts.
isolated.
I was very isolated. I had that room all
Yeah.
to myself. With
Yeah,
all the,
the
with all the
closet room.
equipment.
Yeah.
Limited visiting hours and numbers.
Yes. Also, I had no hay fever while I was in hospital. Isn't that crazy? But as soon as I came
crazy.
out, I had like crazy hay fever.
Oh, God.
It's to protect the aliens they have in the hospital.
Yeah,
Can't let them breathe in our human spores.
that's true.
So I learnt a fun fact about hay fever that I thought
Ooh.
I'd share because I've shared it with many people since I found it out.
Mhm.
So the reason that we see an increase in hay fever, especially around like the actual season, is because there are male trees and female trees in the world of pollination, and male trees produce more pollen. And because there's been more male genome trees planted and plants planted, there's just like an influx of more pollen.
So it's tree junk, jizz,
Yeah.
sperm getting in your face.
That's so cool.
Oh.
I'm so glad I have that in my sinuses.
Yeah.
It's like when you
I
watch
love-
a David Attenborough sing about the ocean and all the coral starts to like populate and things like that. And you're
Yeah.
like, fuck, I hope nobody was swimming in that, like all that gross shit.
How much does a whale nut?
Yeah, apparently
'Cause-
it's like insane amounts. There's questions that I have as well about that sort of thing. Like whales are mammals, and mammals
Yes.
tend to get menstruation. Is
Yes.
the sea just full of giant whale ovum leftovers?
Look, potentially, because like dogs and like other mammals also, when they're in heat, get a period. It's very weird. I didn't realize it was a thing until probably like a year ago. I was
Yeah.
very old when I realized that, like, oh, okay.
Well,
It's
I
very
think
bizarre.
some animals don't get, like some dogs in particular, don't get it because I think they've been spayed and things like that.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. I don't
Yes,
know.
that is correct. Yes.
Ah, yeah,
Because
'cause I was gonna
the
say, I don't remember.
person, yeah, the person that I saw whose dog was like going through it was like not spayed because they wanted to like use her as a breeding dog, and I was like, I'm gonna enough Instagram for today. No, thank you.
Yep, done with that. Not interested.
Anyway, who the fuck are you, Hags?
Just because I needed to go on to and see about whale stuff. They don't. Whales don't menstruate.
They don't?
They don't.
No, only primates and elephant shrews menstruate. What the fuck is an elephant shrew? Those are the mouses with the long noses.
Yeah.
And they're like
the big nose.
Yeah.
But dogs menstruate. What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
also dogs, but
Oh,
that's
okay.
a different process.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, I think, with dogs.
Yeah,
it's not like a...
monthly
Yeah, it's not a
situation.
monthly.
Cool. So off that fucking topic.
Yeah. Who the fuck are we?
I am Laura, and I am the nappy that the dog mums force their poor menstruating baby girls to wear.
Oh god, I know what you mean. Oh. I am Tay, and I am the rusty pair of broken scissors left behind at a crime scene.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Very nice.
And I am Lacey. I'm the family member who will never know what happened to their child.
Oh,
Grim.
Now I'm sad.
Yeah. So children,
Yeah.
this podcast will make you think twice about having those things.
The perfect
Yeah.
birth control.
Yeah.
Well, I've been called other things before in my life, but I think I like that one the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very grim episode. warnings are child death and mutilation.
Molestation.
And yes, there is
Yeah.
sexual abuse mentioned. So if those are problems for you, there's no shame in missing this episode. That's fine. We'll be back with you next week. Well, not next week, next fortnight, you know. So yeah, don't feel like you have to listen to this. Don't put yourself through something that might upset you.
Yep.
Cool.
Shall we begin?
Well, I did have some housekeeping just before we
Okay.
crack into it.
Yes, please.
One of our listeners has a birthday when this episode gets released. Woohoo!
Wonderful.
Happy birthday to Siobhan. Yes, that's all I'm going to sing at that. You get 2 bars. Yay, happy birthday, Siobhan. Thank you for listening. Yay.
We have a couple of comments from YouTube. So thank you to Mediocre6 and the full stop. It's just a single full stop. I would love to shout you out, but you don't have a name. And also to Grass and Safety Pins and Things, which is my beautiful and talented friend Rebecca, who I did fashion with back in the day. And also thank you to Jackson on Twitter.
Amazing. We love and appreciate everyone's comments.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you for the validation.
Yes.
Yes.
As always.
Thank you for the validation.
We always post your little screen caps of the comments in our Discord and scream together happily.
Yes.
So, yeah, if you want to evoke that reaction from us, you know how.
Yep.
Bring a little sunshine to our ISO, please.
Yay. I am first today in our stories. And just in case you haven't cottoned on, we have a theme today of child murderers. So I decided to have a look into something that I'd never heard about before. I was watching a YouTube compilation of I've forgotten how you say his name. You know how I say his name, Lacey. We were talking about him last night.
Oh, Rob Gavigan.
Yes.
Formerly Rob Dyke.
Gavigan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Formerly Rob Dyke.
Yeah. Who had to change his name because YouTube's algorithms suck. Yeah. So I was watching one of his compilations on the most evil kids in history. And one popped up and I was like, I have never heard about this before, and I found it really hard to get any information on. But I thought I would cobble together what I could find and tell you guys about Gabriel Cunha and David Petri. Heard about him?
No.
Never.
Yeah. Okay. So it's from Brazil, for a start. So in part, that's sort of why it has been difficult to find information, because obviously a lot of stuff hasn't been translated to English.
That's what
I
Google
use Google
Translate is
Translate.
for.
Exactly, but I use Google Translate, and even then, like, a lot of the articles are really spotty on information. But there is very graphic images that pop up when you search for this, so just warning, if you're going to Google this case, you will see horrible things that you maybe don't want to see. So be very cautious.
I want to Google it now.
Wait.
Okay.
Wait until I've told you what you will see.
Okay. All right.
I need context for the horror.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, also, spoilers, don't Google until I've told you what was happening.
Take it away.
Okay, so, basically, the 2 boys, Gabriel Cunha and David Petri, live in Santa Catarina in Brazil. They're relatively close neighbours. They live in the same neighbourhood. Mm-hmm. By all accounts, Gabriel was a very sweet kid, came from a stable family, loving family, etc. By comparison, typical, I guess, in what we see in a lot of these cases with kids, Daniel was considered quite aggressive from a young age. His parents had a lot of trouble with him. They sent him to a psychiatric therapy hospital, and he refused to attend or he would leave early. And he eventually just left school altogether when he was quite young, and they didn't really try to make him go back, as far as I could tell.
Oh, God.
Yep, so he spent a lot of time instead watching television and online, and that is where he met 12-year-old Gabriel. So when they met, Daniel is 16 years old, and prior to the case, that's basically everything that I can find.
What year is this?
In 2007.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not very long ago, but it is 10 years ago, well, plus. And every time I think about that, that upsets me because I graduated in 2008, so I remember exactly when this is. So they meet online through an MMO called Tibia. Have you guys ever heard of that one?
No.
Really? It's like one of the longest running games. Yeah, it's like from 1997, and it's you can still play it now. It still exists. I watched some.
through.
Yeah, I know. I watched some videos on it, but it looks a lot like RuneScape, which is my be all and end all back in the day.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm a big RuneScape nerd. Love RuneScape. So yeah, Daniel and Gabriel play together on Tibia, and Gabriel's parents supposedly are really not into this. They think Daniel's way too old to be playing with their 12-year-old son.
Yep.
And they're also aware of his violent outbursts. So from what I can tell, either they'd known each other for a little while, or in their neighborhood, Daniel was quite notorious, or they were good enough friends online that they had met in person as well and hung out. Which makes sense because Daniel knows where Gabriel is by the end of this story.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Apparently Gabriel asked Daniel for a loan in-game to help him progress of 20k gold. And I found out that isn't that much back in the day. Like, apparently, even when you're low level, that might make you 10 hours of gameplay to acquire, which to anyone that has played a lot of MMOs, that's not very much time.
That's a drop in the ocean there.
Exactly. And apparently by the time, like, you're quite leveled, it might take you an hour to make that much. So it's not a huge sum.
Yeah.
It's a busted economy.
Yeah, exactly.
Patch this.
Fix it. So yeah, Daniel agrees, but later Gabriel either refuses to pay him back the gold or can't, at the point that Daniel starts asking for it back.
Yeah.
So 23rd of July, 2007, Gabriel blocks Daniel online. And Daniel's infuriated. He calls Gabriel's mother. So how the fuck he knows Gabriel's mother's number? They must have a pretty close relationship, as I was saying before.
Or she's in the phone book.
Well, this is it. She isn't home. She's away. She can't do anything. So she's got a mobile, and mobiles never went in phone books as far as I was aware.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so...
I think like white pages and yellow pages was just like landlines.
Yeah. Unless you're a business and you request your mobile to be put in there, as far as I was aware.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you don't have your home mobile listed.
That's creepy.
Exactly. So I think they probably had a relatively close relationship of some sort, as you sort of did when you're a kid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're friends as a kid back in the 90s, which is how old I am, like, you knew your best friend's home number off by heart, as well as you knew your parents and your grandparents.
Yes.
Very true.
When you got your shitty Nokia brick, you had your best friend's mum's number in there.
Yep.
So you could be like, we want to have a sleepover.
Yeah, exactly.
My friend is out of credit. Can you pick us up from the shops?
I
Or you
once-
would like 1-800 reverse it.
I was just going to say that. I once got in so much trouble for doing that.
It's funny.
It's not that I did it. It's that I did it and then it connected and I got scared and hung up. So my parents paid $18 for a call I hung up on.
Oh no!
I was a dickhead. I
God.
was like 10. Always dumb. Never was smart. So, Daniel goes to Gabriel's house, and he basically goes to demand the money back or beat Gabriel up for cheating him.
Nice.
Either one.
Good choices.
know.
Yep.
Yeah. So Daniel rings the doorbell and Gabriel opens the door, and immediately Daniel begins to brutally punch and kick Gabriel. Gabriel,
God.
I know. We'll get ready. Gabriel threatens to tell his parents to get Daniel to stop, and instead Daniel takes a cable and begins to strangle Gabriel. He drags him to the bedroom and sexually rapes him.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh shit.
I know. It escalated
Yeah.
quickly. He strangles him further to the point that he believes Gabriel to be dead. So he wants to hide the body. So he tries to hide the body in the attic, but he's not strong enough to lift him up there. So instead, he retrieves a knife and a hacksaw.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, there's some math here between that decision and this decision. And I'm
Yeah.
not good at math, so I'm just gonna keep listening.
Well, it just further proves that he must have fucking known Gabriel quite well, because he knows where the fuck a hacksaw is in his
Yeah.
family's house. I don't know where shit is in my family's house.
I don't know where shit
I
is in
still
my
forget-
own house.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I still forget which mug like which cupboard my mug is at Tim's house, and I'm always opening the wrong cupboard.
And then you feel like you're starting to snoop into his shit, and you're like, oh god, what am I doing?
Oh no, this is where the good crystal is.
So yep, yeah, you're right. There's some math that goes on. But basically, he begins to cut off Gabriel's right leg. Gabriel is still alive.
Oh god.
No!
Yep. He gains consciousness.
No shit. Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god.
He regains consciousness during the amputation and begins to scream. Gabriel has both of his legs removed by Daniel. Daniel attempted to hide his body in the attic once more by wrapping a cable around his body and using it to hoist him up. That fails. Yeah. And you know he does that because he left the cable there wrapped around him. And these are unfortunately the images that you can see if you Google it. So
Oh shit.
yeah, be real careful. It's very easy to find these pictures. Basically, as soon as you put in anyone's name into Google, these images start to pop up, and they're the first ones that show up.
See, that's why I don't even go on the popular page of Reddit. Because I'm a baby, and if I'll be very upset. And now but in my head, I'm like, just Google the name. Just Google it. And I'm like, no.
Don't if you like, yeah.
No.
If you're not someone who's already fucked up like I am, don't Google it.
Desensitized to the world.
Yeah.
Thank you, Live Leak.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Rotten.com, my formative years on the internet.
Bodyguard.
Oh yeah, best score. God,
Best score,
even just the fucking main banner on best score is awful.
Yeah.
That sticks in my mind forever.
No, please.
So yeah, witnesses see Daniel leave the residence covered in blood. A short while later, Gabriel's brother returns home and discovers Gabriel's body. He runs next door for help, and the neighbor calls the police. Supposedly, police found Daniel and Gabriel's online conversation, which took place very shortly beforehand and was not very happy. And they took Daniel into custody almost immediately. He admits to the crime, but denies the sexual assault, screaming that he wasn't a homosexual, which is probably not the word that he used, but
No.
you know. The autopsy concludes otherwise. Gabriel lived through the hacksaw amputation of both of his legs, and he died as a result of massive blood loss.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's a 12-year-old, by the way. That's the thing that I keep coming back to. Like, it's a very young child who experienced such a horrible, traumatic thing.
Over some fucking gold in a video game.
Yup. And we'll come back to that as well, because
Yeah.
weird shit happened after this, like, in relation to the game. So Daniel was held at a juvenile detention center until his sentencing, and he was sentenced through 3 years in a juvenile detention center. That's the maximum penalty for young offenders in Brazil. So he served 3 years. He was released in September of 2010. Nothing further has been found out about him since, but he was born the same year as me in 1991, so he would now be 28 or 29, and he would have been out for almost a decade.
That's chilling.
Yeah. Gabriel was born in 1995, and he would have been 25 this year.
Oh, gosh.
So there's a quote from Daniel after he was basically put into the juvenile detention center, and he said, "Gabriel cheated, and I will make him pay for all of his actions, as he said that there is in heaven or hell. If there is a hell, he is there, and I will find him, and I will take revenge again."
Right. I don't think he's in hell. For taking 20k gold. I just googled it. I couldn't help myself. I googled it.
I knew you fucking would. You've been quiet for too long. Yeah, it's
dear.
awful.
There's just so much blood.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's very upsetting. You see everything.
Yeah, you do. You do.
I'm going to give that one a miss.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't do it, man.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah, so a lot of people, because Daniel actually later said, like, the game made him crazy. Obviously it didn't. Like, he had psychiatric problems prior to this. But a lot of people apparently, and this is something that I couldn't verify, I just couldn't find this information, but there's a lot of, like, message boards for Tibia that, like, people got really mad about. Like, a lot of people were claiming that this whole case was fake, it didn't happen, or it did happen but the game wasn't related, or the pictures were all faked, they weren't real. All sorts of stuff. And basically, like, apparently 20,000, like, it must have been more than that. I think my brain's latching onto the 20k number. I think it was more than that. But basically, the reports that I've managed to get translated said that, like, a whole, like, couple of thousand people or more went to the streets and protested against Tibia being involved in this murder, and basically were like, the game's not violent. It's like, we know that, but I guess you think by 2007 people would be like, yeah, the game really didn't have anything to do with this. The kid was the problem here. But yeah, people were really upset about it. People are still trying to say that this didn't happen, which is why it's so interesting trying to find information about this case, because I couldn't find a lot of direct news reports, even in news in Brazil. It's fairly weird. Really, really weird. But the pictures pop up straight away.
They do. They fully do.
Yep. First image result on Google. But yeah, that's the case of Gabriel Cunha and Daniel Petri. My sources that I did manage to find, it's in a lot of YouTube compilations, so I don't know where their sources were, because I went straight to them to try and find out where they got their info, and they don't list it, so I'm mad about that. But I read through a lot of different Reddit threads. There is a mention in Wikipedia of it, but the link that goes to it is now dead, and the 2 references mentioned are now missing. So I got the majority of my info from reallifevillains.fandom.com, Wikipedia.
Fandom.com. Okay. Yep.
I didn't know this was a thing, but it's a big ass fucking wiki for real life villains, and they really mean real life villains. I've got like Fidel Castro and the Columbine shooters and all sorts of people in there. It's very weird.
Because there's fandom wikis for lots of things, but like real life villains. Would you call them a villain? I feel like that's too a downplay of a word for people like that.
It's a bit too Disney.
Glorifying what they've done.
It is very Disney.
Yeah. It's a problematic term in my head. But yeah, no, I don't know what else you call them though as a group, would you?
I guess. There's probably like varying degrees of villainry.
Yeah. Especially because like when I watch a lot of movies, I often identify with the villain and I really like them. So I don't like the idea of people who went out and murdered kids and, you know, genocide and shit like that.
Yeah.
To be in the same class as Loki and shit like that.
I
don't
love
know.
Loki.
Me too. I like Loki a lot. I like funny trickster characters.
Yeah.
Get help.
Yeah.
Get help.
But yeah, I also got my information from Tibia Community, which is a big blog for Tibia. And escrito con blogspot.com. Don't know how to pronounce that. I'm really sorry. I went in strong and I hoped I could fumble my throw through it. I didn't.
The confidence was there.
The confidence is there, yeah.
Side note, there was something really interesting that I came across while I was researching for this, trying to find out which one I would do. There's a documentary, quite a short one, it's only about 30 minutes long, called Child of Rage from CBS 1992. That's on YouTube.
Love Child of Rage.
So interesting.
It's such a chilling interview.
So chilling. That poor kid.
I almost chose her.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Yeah, I know.
Because she's just the level of just awfulness of that story. It keeps going.
Yeah.
And the comments are horrid because.
Yes.
So to give some context about what we're talking about for people who obviously haven't seen it, because we're freaks and we just Google weird shit.
Yeah.
So on YouTube, this documentary is about a very little girl and her very young brother. She's only about 4, maybe 6, I think is how old she is when she's being interviewed, who have been adopted by parents from an extremely abusive household. And she's been so abused that she emotionally cannot empathize. And so she takes her rage out on her younger brother. And she's being interviewed by child psychologists, and they're looking to help her, obviously. And she's matter of fact explaining why she does things and how she does them. And they're very horrible and quite graphic, because she doesn't understand that it's not what you're meant to be doing. And she's only a very, very little girl. And the comments from people on YouTube are like, I hope she rots in hell and stuff. And it's like, the documentary literally explains that she's the victim here and what happened to her has made her this way. And at the end
Yes.
of it, she does recover quite a lot. And you're still like, I hope she rots in hell. What the fuck is wrong with you? That's a baby.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
it's not her fault that she is this way, and she does try to get better.
Yeah. She doesn't want to be that way.
It fucks me up. It really upsets
Who
me.
would want to be that way?
Well,
Think-
some children, from what I have
Yeah.
found Googling fucking this case, were like
Yeah.
looking up to this in a weird way. I didn't like it. It was very
I
upsetting.
feel like that's very much a teen thing.
Very teen,
Is to
yeah.
like the Columbine shooters. Like there is a whole fandom is not the right word, but it is the word that fits. There is a fandom around those shooters.
Definitely. And it's
People,
really-
yeah, people think they're handsome. They look up to them. It's quite bizarre.
Yep. What about the guy, the Boston Marathon
Yes.
bomber? And people were like, "Oh, he's really attractive. He shouldn't go to jail because he's really attractive." Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like all the women that wrote to Ted Bundy.
Oh God.
It's very
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah.
And all the people that think Jeffrey Dahmer's attractive and shit like that.
Jeffrey Dahmer was not attractive.
He wasn't. He was really not.
I don't know. I could see it without the glasses on.
Just the silence, the beat of like processing.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
But,
well, thank you.
That's my story. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for that horrific retelling.
Thanks, man.
Anytime, champs. Who's next?
Yes.
Miss
That would be
Tay.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us.
So similar to Child of Rage, my story does include a child that is quite young. Not
And
as
rage.
young. Yes, and lots. Dude, so much rage. So this is the story of Mary Bell.
Yes! I love Mary Bell. Oh my god.
So interesting. I watched a doco on her. It's crazy. Tell me everything.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Wonderful. I hope I can give you a little bit more detail on certain things because I found some cool sites that actually had her statements on them.
Ooh. I don't think I've
Yeah.
heard statements.
No, I
Yeah.
haven't. I definitely haven't. I'm very keen.
Yes. All right. Let me set the scene. So on May 25th of 1968, two boys were playing in an abandoned housing estate in Newcastle, England. Inside one of the dilapidated houses, they discovered the body of 4-year-old Martin Brown. Beside his body was an empty pill bottle, and police were notified, and his death was presumed an accident, and they had no suspects. So Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957, to 17-year-old Betty Bell. Mary's life did not have a good start. So when Mary was born, Betty told the nurse to take her away. She didn't want her. Betty tried to give Mary away to a woman outside an abortion clinic.
Holy shit. That's not
she
the
just-
person who's going to want it, though.
No.
Was she protesting against abortion? She's like, here, have my kid.
Potentially.
I
You
thought
love
she was
kids
just
so
handing
much.
it off to someone who's
Yeah.
about to...
Well, she's just trying to get rid of it. So, a bit of backstory about Betty. Apparently, Betty was a sex worker. She performed prostitution, and she was no way in any way related to the sex work, but she was a shitty mum. Obviously,
Yeah.
she's trying to give her baby away at an abortion clinic. She's a shitty mum, but she's also like a kid herself. She's a teen mum.
Yeah, how old was she?
17.
Okay.
That's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so after didn't want her, tried to get rid of her. So then, allegedly, Betty had attempted to kill Mary
Ooh.
multiple times in the first few years of Mary's life.
Fucking
So
hell.
these attempts were made to look accidental. So Mary at one point fell, I've quoted around this, fell from a window, which apparently led to brain damage. So there's trauma to her prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain associated with voluntary movement and decision making.
Ah,
Head injuries are huge thing in
interesting.
serial killers. A
Yeah.
lot of them have
Yep.
massive
Right.
head injuries.
And then Mary had overdosed on sleeping pills. Though a family member claims they saw Betty offering them to Mary as sweets.
Oh.
Yeah. So, not great. Gets worse. There's also claims that Betty prostituted Mary out to local men starting at the age of 4.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. So this kind of continued on through her life. And that's like a pretty significant cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mary also used to show signs of like classic like child abuse symptoms. Like she would wet the bed, she was nervous, she used to have control over everything, she was a compulsive liar.
Mm-hmm.
Betty would take Mary's face and rub it into the bed after she'd soiled it.
Oh.
And like she was very into humiliation. She hated her daughter.
Yeah.
Fuck. Like,
But as a teen mum who probably doesn't know she didn't know the father.
Yeah.
No one really knows. Apparently Betty had married a guy named Billy. Like a year or two after Mary was born. People like kind of speculate if he was the biological father, but we don't know.
yeah.
So like all this stuff is just kind of turning into this knot of rage, as we said before.
Yeah.
Another child of rage.
Yes.
Yes. So the Bell family lived in Scotswood, Newcastle. So crime rates in this area were like super high. A lot of domestic violence cases, lots of robberies. Their house was pretty run down. It was pretty bare of furniture. It was often like pretty dirty. So Mary had a poor childhood as well as a poor childhood.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So at school, teachers described Mary as a disruptive child, a show-off and a liar.
Mm-hmm.
She would repeatedly say she would hurt people and brag that she was a murderer. She wanted to hurt people. She like kind of, I guess, got off
Yeah, to
on
get her
that
own
kind of
back,
control. Yeah. And then Mary, despite all of her cruel nature, she made a friend in Norma Bell. No relation beyond friendship. They just had the same last name by happenstance. So Norma was 13 and Mary was 10 the time that this whole case takes place.
Okay.
It's just, Mary was very young. So on May 11th of 1968, Mary and Norma were playing with a 3-year-old boy atop an air raid shelter. The boy fell. I've put this in many quotation marks as well. He fell from atop the shelter and it was deemed an accident.
Yeah.
The next day, Mary attacked and choked 3 young girls in the neighborhood. The girls' mothers, their separate mothers, reported the incident to the police. Mary was interviewed by the police and was released after a stern lecture. And no charges were pressed.
Okay.
Because she's 10. Yeah.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do with a 10-year-old who does that?
So 2 weeks later, young Martin Brown is discovered dead in the abandoned housing. The boy we mentioned at the start. So Mary and Norma followed the 2 boys who found Martin inside the house. They followed them in. And when the police arrived, the girls were ordered to leave the scene. And coroner reports state that Martin did not die from pills, but from asphyxiation. So he was also strangled.
Yeah.
Okay. The next day, May 26th, this is Mary's birthday. Norma's father caught Mary choking his other daughter. He slapped Mary and sent her away.
Shit.
Yeah.
So she likes choking people.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
got I guess she must just, there's a pattern.
Yeah.
So later that night, the girls vandalized a local nursery school. So they trashed the rooms, they took all the cleaning equipment and supplies and spilt them everywhere. They wrote a bunch of notes and left them there confessing to the murder of Martin Brown, saying things like, "We're fucking murderers, you bastards will never find us, we did it." Then they had like a bunch of like homophobic slurs and stuff like that, and it was just a whole thing.
Yeah.
Tells you a lot about the environment those children are in.
Yes.
Like I think I've said this on the podcast before. When I was a kid, there was a guy that would bully me, and my friend and I were walking home one day, and the kid he was much older. He was riding his bike behind us, and he was like, said something nasty to me that was like, "Fuck your mum," and I was like, "I do fuck my mum," and my friend was like, "Do you know what that means?" I'm like, "No." When I found out, I was very upset, and my mother, I hope you're not listening to this. But yeah, it was like, I think I was like 10 or 11, and I had no idea about any of that or what that meant. It wasn't until I was probably like just leaving primary school as a 12-year-old that I started to figure that shit out.
Yes.
And I don't think I was a particularly sheltered child, but like I don't think a lot of kids back in the day, like now it's different with the internet and things like that. When your primary source of information though is your direct like family and the people around you, obviously that's going to have a big effect on what you know and the language that you use and things like that. So if these kids, 10 and 13, are using that sort of language and thinking about those sorts of things, like, fuck, that environment must be harsh.
Exactly. Well, there was in the statement, this just reminds me of Mary's actual statement that she said that at one point when they were walking home from somewhere, there was a black kid in the street, and they had yelled at him. What did they say? They said, again, I apologize, I am trying to paraphrase, it is quite upsetting. They said that he needs to be whitewashed and they need to wash his skin because he's dirty.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
So there is like this whole environment they are in is quite full of rage. Like there is just so much hate in this environment they're in.
yeah.
So 4 days later, after the girls trashed the nursery school, this is May 30th, just for some like grounding in the timeline, Mary visited the Brown household of the young boy who died, Martin, asking if she could see him. Martin's mother gently tried to remind Mary that Martin passed away, like he's dead. She's trying to grieve, but she's also going to be like, okay, to try and let this kid down easy. To which Mary responded, I know he's dead. I wanted to see him in his coffin.
Oh,
What
no.
a charming little girl.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I believe after that she was very much promptly sent away. So the next day, the 31st, a recently installed alarm system at the nursery school alerted police to another break-in. When they arrived on the scene, they found Mary and Norma loitering outside the school. Both girls denied any involvement in the break-ins and were let go.
Right.
Yes. And then a week later, Mary attacked Norma at school.
Oh.
She scratched and kicked Norma in the head and eye. She screamed, I am a murderer, then pointed towards the house that Martin Brown died in and said, that's where I've killed. A kid on the playground saw it, but just laughed.
She was such a
because
liar.
of
Yeah.
Mary's reputation of being a liar. So then we have kind of 2 months of like not much at all. Like I'm sure Mary did plenty of more bragging about murder and killing in this time. People are spooked, but not like spooked enough to really do anything because like Scotswood is a rough area. It's commonplace for people to get hurt, and like her notorious lying, like everyone's like, yeah, whatever. And then in July, 3-year-old Brian Howe goes missing. Neighbours and family immediately start searching the surrounding suburbs. Mary and Norma join in. Mary told Brian's sister Pat to check a nearby vacant lot that Brian might be hiding amongst the discarded concrete. Norma denied the claim and urged the group to move on. In Mary's statement, Pat is described as a rough tomboy, and if she found out, she'd, quote, kill them for what they did. So Norma was probably pretty spooked and just didn't want Pat to make the connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian was later discovered where Mary had said he would be, and he was dead. Grisly details.
Yep.
He was strangled to death, and a number of cuts and mutilations had been performed on his body post-mortem. The letter M was carved into his chest, and his genitals were mutilated.
Fucking hell.
A pair of scissors were found at the scene, and the M was carved with a razor blade.
Yeah.
The coroner deducted that the killer was probably a child, as the force behind the cause of death did not correlate with the strength of an adult.
Yeah.
So police started questioning the local children. Mary and Norma's stories were inconsistent, and Mary did a shit job of hiding her interest in the case. On the day of Brian's burial, Mary was spotted loitering outside the Howe home. She was said to have been seen smiling as they brought him out of the house and kind of rubbing her hands together. Very villainous, like very more little Disney detail for you. She was brought back for questioning by police, and Mary claimed she had seen an older boy hit Brian on the day he died. She claimed the boy had been holding a pair of broken scissors. So big fucking mistake there, mate.
Yep.
Classic murderer slip-up. Mary had not only returned to the scene of her crime multiple times, she had also told the police a piece of info that was only known to them. The discovery of the scissors was not a detail that had been made public.
Fuck Mary. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, fucking idiot. So the girls were interrogated by detectives, and they they broke down under the pressure. It was scary. Mary stated, this is a quote, "I hadn't done nothing. I haven't got the guts. I couldn't kill a bird by the neck or throat or anything. It's horrible, that." So yeah, just relating to their sympathy. Please. Oh, I couldn't hurt a fly. So the inconsistencies in their story led the police to believe that Mary was the leader of the two girls. When they were charged, Mary said, "That's all right with me."
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was fine with it. But Norma denied the accusations and said, I'll pay you back for this. I've never done it. I never did it. Yeah.
Damn.
The press described Mary as evil born. Yep. She was confident and calm during the trial, while Norma was terrified. So the court ruled Mary to be guilty of manslaughter. Court psychiatrists had convinced the jury that she showed classic symptoms of psychopathy. Psychopathy? Psychopathy? Yeah. She could only be tried for manslaughter, I think, as well. There was like a thing because she was so underage. Like, she's a kid. She's 11 at this point. She could not be held fully responsible for her crimes. And Norma was acquitted because they're like, nah. Nah. The prosecution said of the girls at the conclusion of the trial, quote, "In Norma, you have a simple backward girl of subnormal intelligence." Get shit on Norma.
Yeah.
In Mary, you have a most abnormal child, aggressive, vicious, cruel, incapable of remorse, a girl moreover possessed of a dominating personality with a somewhat unusual intelligence and a degree of cunning that is most terrifying.
Oh, God.
That's scary as fuck.
Yes.
It just makes me think so much of the little girl in the Child of Rage documentary. Like, this could have been what happened to her had she not been taken away from that abusive home. Because Mary wasn't, obviously. Mary was left there.
Mary was sentenced to imprisonment at Her Majesty's pleasure, which is a great term that pretty much means we're going to let you out when we feel like it. You have an indeterminate amount of time to your sentence.
It's so wild that that's a thing.
Yeah.
Or was a thing. I don't know if it still
Very
is in
old-worldy,
England.
isn't it?
Like, because in America and Australia, you hear about people who've committed insanely horrifying acts getting out way fucking early, and everyone's like, we couldn't keep them in. There was nothing we could sentence them to that would have kept them in. This is literally the max amount of time that we could have made them go away, and they didn't die while they were in there, so they get to go home.
Yeah. See, I think that the death penalty should be brought back here.
I don't know, because of the amount of cases where a person is innocent.
Yeah, but when they're fucked in the head, when they're a pedophile,
but
they're
what
not
if they're
going to
not?
be rehabilitated, and they should just die. I don't want to keep paying.
What about
for
if
them.
they're not? That's the problem. Like, it's fine if you have a death penalty where there's no doubt in any way, shape, or form that person committed the murder. Someone saw it, and there's cameras and shit. But the problem is that most people who are put away for violent crimes and things like that, there isn't evidence like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. And that's what's so upsetting about it. Because, like, I would 100% be on board with death penalty in cases where, like, yep, we have a video of this guy murdering this woman. Okay, great. He's obviously definitely a murderer. We don't need him. We don't want to have to pay taxes on him. Fair enough. But, I don't want, like, what's it, Andrew Mallard, the guy that they framed for murdering a woman a decade or two ago in Western Australia, and with changes in DNA and things like that, they're like, he never fucking was anywhere near her. This is someone else's DNA, and we know who it is, and they've been dead for 10 years or whatever happened. And he'd served 20 years in prison, and he would have gotten the death penalty had we had it, but he didn't commit the crime.
Oh, there's a whole grey area, and it's very
Kill
awful.
everyone. Kill
That's
everyone.
the problem. Jesus Christ. Okay.
Got our own
We
child
know
of
who's
rape on
on
the
board with the
podcast.
coronavirus, apparently.
Anyway, moving on. So despite 2 escapes and a string of abnormal behaviour in prison, Mary was released in 1980 on probation.
Fuck, that's not that long.
Yeah. She had a daughter
Oh.
to a wedded man.
Oh, okay.
And she tried to hide her past from said daughter. But it was always kind of dredged back to the surface. So Mary attempted to write a tell-all book to set the record straight, in quote, with a writer named Gita Sereny.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm saying that right because it's such a strange name. I've never seen it before. They produced a book called Cries Unheard. But after it was published in 1998, her teenage daughter discovered everything. No way! You
No
fucking
shit.
idiot! So the media swooped in on their house, and Mary and her daughter had to escape with blankets over their heads. She was hidden under protection of the government for her own safety, and Mary is still under protection of the British government today. And court rulings that protect the identities of criminals are referred to as Mary Bell orders.
Oh, okay.
And that is the story of Mary Bell.
So interesting. Do you know
Yeah.
whether the book was like what the book sort of said? Did she deny everything or?
She tried to basically. It was a lot of it was focused on her childhood and trying to be like, there's a reason I was like this. It was
Right.
my
Yeah.
upbringing.
Yep.
And a lot of people wonder if she sensationalized the abuse, but like I don't think so.
Yeah.
It sounded pretty fucked just in like the normal
Yeah.
reports I read, that I'm sure like it's not that sensationalized.
Yeah, I watched some
Also-
documentaries. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say also just like the extent of the killings and the fact that she was 10, I feel like a significant amount of abuse had to have happened for this to be a thing. So it's probably not that sensationalized, unfortunately.
Yeah, I watched a documentary on YouTube about her, and they interviewed the mother of Martin Brown, and that was
okay.
extraordinarily sad, and also some like other people that were like children at the time or lived in the area. And they all sort of were like, oh yeah, Mary Brown's mum fucking hated that kid.
Yeah.
And all that sort of thing. So like, even if it was sensationalized in the book, it probably wasn't very much. Sounds
Yeah.
like it was a really unhappy home.
Yeah.
Yeah. After she was released from prison, Mary actually moved back in with her mother for a short amount of time.
Probably had nowhere to go though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. She didn't have anywhere to go, and I think like that's probably when she kind of became a little bit more aware of the extent of her abuse, because she went through like a whole reform thing and reform school and stuff to try and like
Yeah.
get better. Yeah, it's just a horrible thing, really, isn't it?
Fuck, that's
There's
so
a couple of
interesting.
photos of her online as a young kid. She looks like she should be on the Addams Family.
Yeah, she does.
She had a little
Yeah.
straight across fringe, didn't she?
Yes, yeah, serving bowl cut goth realness. And there are some pictures of her supposedly after she's been released from prison. They do look pretty similar. Whether that's matrixing or not, I don't know, but it's interesting. Anyway, a little bit of source
Yes.
for you, some sources.
Thank you.
Althatisinteresting.com,
Yes.
Murderpedia.org, and Murderpedia on YouTube. I don't know if they have any correlation, but the Murderpedia .org page had some excellent sources for like that's where I found her statement. That's where I found a bunch of recounts of what she did in prison. Also, all of the notes that were left in the nursery school have been transcribed there. It's really, really interesting. There's also some stuff about the parents of the boys who were killed. It's like it's all just plain text. It's not that like engaging. There's no like grisly photos, so go ahead.
Yeah.
There is a photo gallery, but I think it's mostly just pictures of her and the victims as they were,
When they were, yeah.
alive. Yes. And then I've got Good Old Wiki and an encyclopedia of modern serial killers by Michael
That's cool.
Newton.
Haven't heard of that one.
Which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. And that is it.
Super interesting. Thank you. I
Yes,
really
you're
loved
welcome.
That. That was very good.
Classic.
It was very, very interesting. I dare not say fun, but it was a little bit fun because I do
opinion,
like
do
reading.
you think she is
Yes.
evil or she was a product of her upbringing?
Product of her upbringing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I kind of lean the same way
100%.
on that. Yeah, and you presented that well. Like, I don't it's really weird sometimes, like we were talking about this before in a way, and it makes me think about it, how you can sometimes read an article and you're like, oh, this is weird. They're obviously really, like, fanatical about the person who committed the murder, and it's kind of creepy. But there's also ones where you can be like, oh, this person fucking hates this guy, like this kid.
Oh, yeah. The rage.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But like we were talking about before, how there's like teenagers and young children who are in a bad situation are fucking, something happens to them. And they have like power trips, basically. Like a lot of these violent fantasies are ways of gaining control back. And when they do it, like this is why I can totally see, and we were talking about this a while ago, I was like, yeah, I think teenagers are a different beast than children, just because like they are things that go through all those hormones and things like that happen when you're a teenager, and like kids are nasty. Kids are super, super nasty. Yeah.
Kids are so fucking nasty. I was such a cunt.
Oh, me too.
But also everyone was such a cunt to me, and I'm just like, this is just there's like the cycle of just being bullied and being a bully is awful.
It is. It's so bad. The second you get any power, you're like, no, give it to me.
Yeah.
Shoot it into my veins.
I'm glad I grew out of that.
Oh, thank fuck. There is no more obnoxious person in the world than a teenager.
Yeah, I don't know how, like, people who I know, like, decided to be high school teachers. I'm like, why the fuck would you do that to yourself? What kind of punishment do you think you need in your life? You're gonna be a high school teacher.
Nah, dude, they're fucking saints.
They must be. Like, I'm so impressed with people that do that job. I'm like, you could not pay me enough money to go back into a high school.
Oh, no.
Amazing. Well, that leaves you, Lacey.
Cool. So,
what have you got for us?
This cupboard has been great for the audio quality, but not really great for my spine.
Oh, no.
My spine's telling me no, but the audio quality is good. All right. So I did Jesse Pomeroy.
Yes.
I know nothing.
I love it. Oh, Tay, you're gonna have a great time.
I'm ready.
So guys, I tried to play it fast and loose with these notes because there is so much detail in this. I can read the entire thing to you and there would still be details that I will be missing out on. I did not realize how much of a fuckhead this kid was and all like the crazy shit that he did. So, he is also known as the Boston Boy Fiend, the Boy Torturer, the Demon, the Red Devil, and the Marble Eye.
Oh.
Okay, let's go. Jesse Pomeroy was born in Boston in 1859 to Thomas Pomeroy, who was an abusive alcoholic dockyard worker, and his homemaker wife Ruth, who adored him. Jesse disliked sports, don't we all, and spent most of his free time reading super violent tales like Dime a Penny novels about the Native American wars. Every time I put Native American in this piece, it's because it had terrible racist like things that they were called. Right, cool.
Yes.
Of course.
So he was intelligent in the way a textbook psychopath is, but had a lot of problems with bullying at school because of how he looked. He had a huge, bulky frame, was overly tall for his age. His head was huge and really like kind of a bit malformed. But most distinctively, he was born with a whitish membrane over his eye, which completely covered his iris and pupil, making his eye pure white.
Fuck, that's scary as hell.
His own father couldn't stand to look at him.
Oh God, here we go.
So his mother blamed the eye on a reaction from the smallpox vaccine.
Oh, okay.
But
so anti-vaxxer on our hands.
Anti-vaxxer on our hands. But just to dispel that, I looked up all known reactions to the smallpox virus since its inception in 1796. And there was no descriptions of the vaccine affecting the eyes in any way. It was mainly like skin stuff, not eye stuff. So she was wrong.
Get fucked.
So when he did manage to play with other children, it was only because they were playing cowboys and Native Americans. Because he wanted to play the Native American, because they were always like depicted as like massive animal savages back in the day, so that he could reenact torture methods like scalping on like the captive cowboys, like he'd read in the novels.
Oh God!
Okay.
So Jesse's mother loved her son, even though he regularly stole money from her, lied to her, was always like wagging school, and she knew that he was super vicious. Here we go. So we've got some animal mutilation tag here. So
Okay.
before he turned 10, lots of pets disappeared from their neighbourhood. When he was 5, he was caught torturing a cat. By the way, that cat survived. I made sure I researched that. That's fine. The cat was fine.
I'm glad that someone recorded that. Thank fuck.
A detail we
And
needed.
one day his mother came home from work to find that Jesse had killed her 2 canaries by twisting off their heads.
Oh my god.
Oh, little bird bones, no.
No, those poor birds. Fucking hell.
Jesse's piece of shit father would often punish Jesse by stripping him naked and beating him with a belt until blood was drawn. So the stripping the naked thing, it wasn't like a sexy thing. It was because the father didn't want the clothes to be a barrier to the belt so that it would hurt more and there'd be more blood. So it wasn't a sexy
Thinking
thing.
it through.
That's really
Yeah.
sadistic.
But somehow...
And humiliating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But somehow 12-year-old Jesse forged a link between the pain and punishment of the beating and sexual satisfaction. Really, really hard.
No, here we
So
go.
this is basically what he would later recreate on his victims.
Right.
Okay.
So before I go on, Jesse had a brother who was also, I think he was called like subnormal intelligence. He was obviously a bit like, didn't look right either. Right in quotation marks. Called Charles. He was normal. He didn't do this shit. He grew up and had a family and had a job and had all these normal things. And he had the same problems. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right? This guy's a prick.
Yeah.
Anyway, carrying on. So we can say with Mary Bell, like, massive fucked up, whereas this kid had a brother, got the same punishment, lived a normal, healthy Christian life. Anyway.
Virtuous, perhaps.
Right. In fact, he was very kind. So,
That's
there you
sweet.
go. Okay, so here's where it all goes downhill. Further
downhill.
downhill.
Oh, yeah. More than it has with the canary heads.
Yeah. So this is starts when he's 12. This is when all this stuff happens.
Okay.
So December 1871, 2 men walking past an old outhouse heard whimpering. As they approached the building, they realized that it wasn't a dog, it was a crying child. Upon entering the building, the men saw 4-year-old Billy Payne hanging by his wrist from a beam. He was half naked, his back covered in welts, and his hands were purple due to the blood trapped by the bindings.
Oh,
And also it was December in Boston. So
cold.
Yeah. The men cut the boy down.
and his fucking shoulders were probably dislocated. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
The men cut the boy down.
He's 4.
Billy was in no condition to give any police any clue to the attacker, and the police sort of filed it away as an isolated incident.
Yes, no one would do
Lazy.
this again. They've done it once, but not again.
Okay, that's incredibly
So then
lazy.
in February of 72, so like 2 months later, Tracy Hayden, now Tracy's a boy's name as well,
Yes.
was lured to the same place called Powderhorn Hill with the promise of, quote, going to see the soldiers, unquote. Once the boys were alone, Jesse bound and tortured him, whipping him, knocking out Tracy's front teeth, breaking his nose, and threatening to cut off his penis. Tracy was so fucked up from the assault that he was unable to describe his assailant beyond having brown hair. So,
How badly do you need to scar someone so they're like, he had brown hair, I have no idea what
yeah,
else.
and considering how different this kid looked to everyone else.
Yeah, it's
So
very
the first
distinctive.
two,
Like,
things. Yeah. So next one, in the spring of 1872, so they said spring, and I got about of an April-May kind of vibe from when the Boston Globe was doing it, the old paper. Couldn't get
Yes.
exact dates because, they were kids and no one cared.
Good police work.
Yeah.
Jesse promised 8-year-old Robert Mayer that he would go and see Barnum's Circus. Instead, Jesse took the boy to Powderhorn Hill at that outhouse and attacked him. Jesse stripped Robert and beat him with a stick. Robert later reported to police that Jesse was fondling himself while he was beating Robert. And then once Jesse got off, he freed Robert and told him that if he told anyone, he would kill him. So this is when he's realized that jacking it to beating other kids is like what is like his life is about at that moment.
Okay.
So the Boston police think how these other 2 incidents weren't isolated. 3 kids have been through this. Massive manhunt ensues, questioning hundreds of people with no luck. There was a $500 reward for capture, which would have been
That's a lot of money.
to today's money, American dollars, would have been $10,578.50.
Nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah,
No.
really, really good.
Well, at least
Even
they did
more
a big
AUD.
180. Yeah, exactly. At least they did a big 180 and went, okay. Maybe we should really put some effort in now.
So he was being called a fiendish boy in all the media, and the media kind of whipped up a storm because the police couldn't catch him. The kid, Jesse Pomeroy, became kind of like a boogeyman to the children of Boston. Like there were songs sung about him.
Oh.
Parents warned children not to talk to strange boys. The word spread very quickly that boys were being taken, but an inaccurate description of they're trying to make him more evil than he seemed, and that it wasn't a boy at all. It was a man with a devilish appearance who was described as having red hair and a pointy red beard.
Oh, great. Now no one's looking for the actual murderer. Well, not
They're
murderer
looking for
yet. The torturer.
fucking
Yeah.
him from the Powerpuff Girls.
That is exactly right. That's what they were looking for.
Yes.
I'm picturing also him wearing little stilettos.
Yeah.
Yeah. His little crab claws. Stomach.
So Jesse struck again in mid-July of 1872, luring an unnamed 7-year-old to the outhouse on Powderhorn Hill, so the same place. The boy was stripped, bound, whipped, and beaten until Jesse achieved orgasm, and then he promised again to kill him if he let anybody know. And then ran away, and that was it. So around this time, Jesse's mother, Ruth, decided to move the family from the Chelsea area to South Boston.
Okay.
Probably because she would have suspected that maybe her son was doing
He
that.
was a sex pest.
So
A sex pest.
the mum had fierce loyalty and love towards Jesse, and she always refused to believe that her boy was capable of these crimes.
Fierce loyalty and
gosh.
love, but allows husband to beat
Yeah,
son.
she actually chased him out with a kitchen knife one night. The dad,
Oh,
she was like, "Fuck you can't beat my
Oh,
boys anymore." She chased him out with the kitchen knife, and the guy never came back.
All
So
right.
now
good.
she's
I
single
have
mom doing it
some
on her
respect for her
own
now.
with
Good
a
on
monster for a son.
Come through, Reed.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
so
Hey, only 50% of her children
yeah,
are
only
monsters.
50% of the children are monsters. So you would have thought that maybe she would have caught on when she saw that the boy torturer had moved his operation from Chelsea to South Boston around the same time the family relocated. So
Nah, ignorance is
Yeah,
bliss,
exactly.
isn't it?
So this is also probably because around the dad left, for good, and fucked off somewhere. We don't know what happened to him. Jesse probably killed him. This is also when the crimes escalated in violence. This is when he started to get more violent than he already was being. 7-year-old George Pratt was wandering the South Boston shoreline looking for treasure. Poor bless. When he was approached by Jesse. So he was taken to a location and things like that. This time, during the attack, Jesse kept repeating the phrase, "You have told 3 lies," as he beat him with a leather belt. This time, Jesse bit off a chunk of flesh from George's ass and then took a
Oh.
sewing needle and began stabbing him in his body. And then finally, he was trying unsuccessfully to pry open George's eyelids so he could stick needles in his eyes.
Oh no! I don't like that. I don't like that. No.
So the next 4 victims. I've just kind of done a quick ones, like lightning
round.
Next one,
We are getting into double digits.
7-year-old Johnny Balch, stripped, bound, tortured until Jesse came. 6-year-old Harry Austin binds, beats him, then takes out a knife. He's got a knife now, and begins to stab the boy and attempts to cut off the boy's penis.
Oh.
7-year-old Joseph Kennedy,
didn't.
stripped, bound, beaten, stabbed with the knife. And then 5-year-old Robert Gould was stripped, bound, beaten, slashed him with a knife, but he was able to give the first good description of the boy to the police. A large
survived.
boy with an eye like a milky. Now, a milky is a white marble. It's what you'd call your white marbles when you were playing marbles, is a milky.
Yeah.
Large boy with an eye like a milky. So with the help from Joseph Kennedy, who also saw Jesse, Boston police conducted a classroom-by-classroom search in the Boston school system for the marble eye. When the police came to Jesse's school, Jesse was wagging, so he was never identified.
Such a simple
Bloody-
fucking way to get out of it.
Rat bag.
You
Just
think
don't
they'd
go.
turn around and be like, hey, are there any kids that aren't here today? Yeah, that one kid with the milky fucking eye isn't here today.
Oh. All right. Have a good day.
Cheers, thanks.
Fucking hell.
So, here's where it gets interesting. Further
Interesting. Beyond all the horrible
So, like
torture.
Mary Bell, Jesse was into knowing what the police were doing at the time. So,
Yeah.
he walked into the South Boston police station at the same time Joseph Kennedy and the officer who had accompanied him around the schools walked in as well. Jesse saw Joseph and later dazed it at the door, but Joseph had already seen him and told the police, like, that's him.
That's it.
And he had like 8 police officers running him down. He didn't leave the street. He was caught.
Good. Fucking hell.
I was going to say, if this kid escapes with like one good eye and 8 officers chasing him, I'm impressed.
I
Well
also
done.
don't know how much he could see out of that eye. I don't know if he was partially
Yeah. I was
just
completely
thinking that.
blind, but something.
Because a membrane makes
Cataract.
me think that,
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't see very well out of it, I would
Yeah.
assume. But who fucking knows? I'm not
Yeah.
an eye man.
An eye man. Optometrist.
I was trying to
An
remember what they're called.
optometrist.
There we go.
An eye man.
an eye
An
man.
eye woman.
Eye
An
man. Yeah, sorry.
Coming soon to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Man.
Eye man.
An
An eye
eye
woman.
woman. I am legend. Okay, so Jesse was brought before a magistrate, and each of the victims recounted his tale and identified Jesse as the guy who did this shit to them. Jesse's mum took the stand in defense of her son, made a huge scene. How dare you? You've got the wrong boy. He could never do these
No,
things.
we don't.
He's a good boy. She wept.
No, we don't. Jesse's
He
mum.
was obedient and hardworking. She didn't actually mention anything about like the family pets. That she didn't mention
Yeah.
that, even though
Let's leave that detail.
when he was asked by the magistrate why he did the attacks, he said, "quote I couldn't help myself," unquote.
No.
So the
Okay.
justice magistrate was like, "Cool. So you're going to reform school until you're 18, and you're going to stay there and reform, and then we'll see what happens." But Jesse, apart from being like, he was smart, so he knew that the chance to leave the reform school before his 18th birthday was to become the model prisoner. So he was fucking amazing at that reform school. He was great.
Of course.
There was one incident, just one, when he was asked by a teacher to help kill a snake. He said he would help, and he basically worked himself up into this huge frenzy and beat the snake into an oozing pile.
Fucking
But otherwise
hell,
he was
that poor
But otherwise he
snake.
was fine. Okay? Totally reformed.
He just really enjoyed murdering something one time.
Super did. All this time, his mother was campaigning to free her son, her innocent son. She was annoying and wrote a lot of letters to a lot of people saying he was too young to be the perpetrator of such crimes and that the police arrested the wrong boy. And then when they went to the reform school, he was like this fucking great kid. And reform school worked. So, a year and a half after his arrest, Jesse Pomeroy was set loose on an unsuspecting public. And this ignorance would have tragic consequences.
Fuck.
Because what do killers do, or what do like rapists and people who beat people up do when the victims can identify them? They'll make sure that they're not in a state to identify them.
Yup.
Oh no. Oh no.
They'll tie up
Here we
that
go.
loose end. That's right.
Oh no.
So 6 weeks after he was paroled in Westboro, he was released into the care of his mother. And she did such a fucking great job beforehand, so obviously it was just going to be amazing. His mother had a dressmaking shop in kind of like a news agency kind of thing. 2 in 1, sure. So 10-year-old Katie Curran, dressed in a black and green plaid dress, entered the store looking for a new notebook. She had a new teacher at school that was starting that day, and so she wanted to have a nice, clean, new notebook for that teacher. She was very good at school, very bright.
Wholesome.
Jesse said that he had one downstairs in the cellar that he could give her for 2 cents off because it had some blotches of ink on it. She was like, that sounds great because I'm a 10-year-old and have 0 money.
Yeah. You just tear the pages out,
yeah.
bruh.
So she followed him down and barely had enough time to realize that she had been tricked before Jesse attacked her. This is a quote from the prick himself. Quote, I followed her, put my arm around her throat, my hand over her mouth, and with my knife, I cut her throat. I then dragged her behind the water closet, laying her head furthest up the place. It's like a sort of big, a water closet, hole in the wall. And I put some stones and some ashes on her body. Jesse would confess, said this, quote, after Katie had been found in such a severe state of decomposition. But when she was found, her head was completely severed and her abdomen and genitals had been mutilated.
Oh, God.
So he'd come back to the
Yeah. I mean, it was
scene.
It was just
returned
downstairs from his house. So he could just go there
Oh
anytime he
my
wanted, I guess. So then after he killed Katie, he then washed his hands and went back to work as if nothing had ever happened.
Fuck. Wild.
So several people had seen Katie go into Pomeroy's shop that morning, and despite Katie's body rotting beneath her, when Mrs. Pomeroy received a visit from the police, she was a complete bitch and felt victimized because her son was a prime suspect in a murder.
Oh, for
And
fuck's
Katie
sake.
was downstairs, like in her fucking house.
Mrs. Pomeroy, it smells like a dead fucking body in your
Yeah.
house, and your son has been linked to this shit before, but nope, not my boy.
So Mrs. Curran, Katie's mother, knew. She was like, holy shit, my kid is dead and your son did it. But at the police station, his name's Captain Dyer. He assured her that Jesse couldn't be involved because he only attacks little boys and he has also been completely rehabilitated. In fact, this Captain Dyer was the one who said at the reform school, oh yes, he's rehabilitated, he can go out now. So that guy fucked up. So,
Royally.
despite a massive search, Katie was never found at that point.
Oh, fuck's sake.
Now, what the local rumours was, so Katie's father was a Catholic, her mother was a Protestant. We know that has issues. So,
Yes.
what the local rumours and things, the reason why she disappeared, everybody said, was because Katie's father had sent her to a Catholic convent and didn't tell her mum about it because he wanted his daughter to be Catholic. Unfortunately, that wasn't the
okay.
case. That would be great if she was a nun.
No,
somewhere,
if only.
but she's not. So there is, in between the next murder, there was a little boy called Harry who was 5 years old and was walking down the street holding Jesse Pomeroy's hand, you know, obviously on the way to go somewhere, when an unnamed teenager who knew who Jesse was stopped him in the street, took the 5-year-old home back to his mother, yelled at Jesse, called him all the names.
Bless that
saved
kid.
Unnamed hero.
Saved that kid's life. No idea who is, and
Yeah.
he doesn't have a name. But he obviously felt strong enough that he, you know, went up against Jesse. So
Yeah.
we hope that he's alive somewhere. Well, not anymore, but you know,
Bless
back
that
in the
man.
day.
Yeah, well,
So,
I hope his descendants are wildly rich and happy.
yeah.
Yes. May the thousand blessings
Yes.
on his house.
Yep.
So, finally, in April of 1874, at the age of 14, Jesse decided to torture and kill 4-year-old Horace Millen the moment he saw him. Horace even brought him a cupcake from the bakery and shared it with his new friend. Jesse suggested they go to the harbour to see the steamship docked there. Once out of sight, he slashed Horace's throat open,
Oh my
but
god.
Horace was still alive.
Oh my god.
He took 18 more stabs to sever the windpipe, and all over Horace's arms, and you know there was heaps of defensive wounds. So he fought a lot, you know, considering he was a. After Horace was dead, Jesse mutilated the genitals, and Horace was found later on that afternoon by 2 brothers who thought somebody had left a rag doll on the hill. That's how small he was. They thought he was a doll.
That's tragic as
Oh
fuck.
my God.
That's so upsetting. Poor kid.
Yeah. So there was only one logical suspect, that kid with the marble eye who liked to torture boys. But that was impossible, as Jesse Pomeroy was safely locked away until he was 18. When it was revealed to the local police had not been informed that he had been paroled.
No way!
Oh, for fuck's sake.
The police found him at his home and took him into custody despite his mother's protests.
Fuck off, mum.
Jesse reassured his mother that he
Fuck
hadn't
off.
done anything and promised that he would be home soon. Jesse was calm
Nah.
and collected, even as he showed them the pocket knife caked in blood, his shoes covered in marsh grass, which is where the area, and the scratches on his face that he got from, quote, shaving, unquote.
Shame.
Okay.
That was the same knife he used to kill Katie as well.
Oh my
Oh.
god.
So the police actually used a technique that's now used in modern policing today. They took plaster casts of his shoes and matched them to the footprints of the crime scene.
Clever.
Very cool.
Proud of them.
Very cool. When
They're learning.
It's very modern.
when he was told that he was under arrest for the murder of Horace, he was like, "You can't prove anything. You have to let me go."
Yes, we can.
But they super could. They had everything. Because he was one of those people who was like, I'm smarter than the police. So, you know, they have nothing. Because I was so smart because I got out of that reform school. Like, you know. So,
Yeah.
the evidence was so sufficient, it warranted charges for first-degree murder.
Yes. Good job. It only took how many people to die?
Just 2. Well, 1 at the moment. They haven't found Katie yet. So
Yeah.
the penalty for Boston and Massachusetts for murder was death by hanging. Because they had never executed anybody as young as him, there was like a big, like, it was sort of like a bit outrageous. People were like, well, reform school obviously didn't help him. What do we do with this kid? So, there is a great book by, hang on a sec, Harold Schechner, Fiend, The Shocking True Story of America's Youngest Serial Killer. And that goes all through the court and all the trials and everything because it was such a huge case. Though I'm not going
Yeah.
to mention it because if you're interested in it and thinking like, do we kill a child? We should, but we shouldn't do that. That's a different thing. So I'm just glossing over that because we're all about murder and we don't have time to go into like law and order shit. Here we go. I've got this quote from the Boston Globe. The boy Pomeroy seems to be a moral monstrosity. He had no provocation and no rational motive for his atrocious conduct. He did not know the little lad Millen at all, but enticed him away and cut and hacked him to death with a penknife merely for sport. People hated the cunt. Like, they wanted him dead. But they were like, you can't kill a child because that's bad. You know what I mean?
Then we'd be as bad
Yeah.
as him.
So,
Just lock him away until he's an adult. Then you can kill him.
Yeah. Let him marinate for a few more years.
Yeah, and then double check. You'd be like, do I still think we should kill this guy?
are you
Yes.
done yet?
Yes, I do.
So back to Jesse's mum. Ruth Pomeroy made herself, like, didn't make anything easy for herself. She continued to insist on Jesse's innocence and
Ruth!
blamed the grieving families for her son's fate.
Oh, Ruth!
Oh,
Victim
She had to close
blaming!
down
Jesus
She
Christ!
had to close down her
Bitch!
store because nobody was buying from there.
Yeah, no
and that
shit,
kind of
Ruth.
thing. And
Good.
also, so because she had, nobody's buying to close down, the tenant who took over from her lease wanted to expand. So he decided to refurbish the basement.
no. Oh,
And it didn't take long for the workmen to find the remains of Katie Curran.
Oh, Katie.
She was there
She
for
was there
so
for a long
long.
time. So there's no way that Ruth didn't know that there was a fucking body rotting in her store. Like...
Yeah.
The
The
smell.
July, August, September.
Yeah.
Bugs. yeah.
Bugs.
So when asked why he killed the girl, Jesse gave a blank look and said, quote, I don't know. I really wanted to see how she would act. Because he'd never killed a girl before.
Okay.
So because there was a body rotting in the bottom of the store, Ruth and Jesse's brother Charles were both arrested as accessories to murder. And that was kind of
Forgot about Charles.
was kind of used against Jesse, being like, we're going to arrest your whole family for murdering this kid. Are you going to confess to it? And then he was
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, I'll confess to it. And that way his mother and his brother got to go home.
Fucking hell. Poor Charles.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
basically the matter was settled in August of the next year to commute the sentence of hanging to life in solitary confinement for the rest of his days. So
Oh my god.
Jesse Pomeroy was 16 years old when he entered the Charleston State Prison because it was like the trial was so long it lasted years. All this stuff. He spent the next 53 years there. 41 of those were in solitary confinement.
Fuck!
General population was not a good time for him because people just wanted to kill him. Other murderers were like, how
Yeah.
do you kill kids? You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And I just want to leave with a quote from Boston Globe. When describing Jesse's features, he said, "They are wicked eyes, sullen, brutishly wicked eyes. And as in the moments of wandering thought the boy looks out of them, he seems one who could delight in the writhings of helpless victims beneath the stab of his knife. The puncture of all, or the prick of pain, he is so often delighted in. There is nothing interesting in that look. He is altogether unsympathetic and merciless." And that is Jesse Pomeroy, the boy fiend.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Fucking hell.
That's intense, thank you.
Very intense.
Fuck.
That's a fucking
Yeah.
time, right? Ruth.
And
Get
Just
his
quickly.
mother was his only visitor in prison, by the way.
Okay.
She believed that he was
Fair.
innocent till the end. She was in such denial. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Tay?
I was gonna say, just quickly, like, just on the comment of solitary confinement and how I am experiencing isolation. I can't imagine what
41
solitary
years.
confinement must be. Because I've been in self-imposed isolation loosely since March. I still am considered essential, so I do work once or twice a week. And I'm just like clawing up the walls with just like trying to deal with it. So like being in prison solitary confinement with no stimuli.
Very small rooms.
Yeah, it's suffocating.
I've been reading a book
It's a
about
just sentence.
Goulburn Jail in Australia, which is for max security prisoners, and they have a lot of our worst criminals in isolation, and they're basically in permanent isolation. They occasionally are allowed, because basically the way this cell's constructed, I found this really interesting. Two prisoners will each have their own cell, and they share a common room that they alternate and get access to. And that occasionally they might be allowed in together for an hour. But it's caused problems because, like, Ivan Milat tried to cut off his fucking pinky finger and send it out through the other prisoner to an Australian premier or something like that.
Oh, God, fucking Milat.
Yeah, and another Australian murderer, serial killer, I believe he was almost had his like throat slashed by another prisoner who he was sharing the common room with. All sorts of shit like that. But they say it's like very, very bad for the human psyche, and I can only imagine because we have something to do. Like, we have uni right now. Lacey doesn't, but we have something that's like, okay, I have to actually do things while I'm in confinement, so at least there's like part of your time is consumed by something. But can you imagine confinement without Netflix and like no internet,
no Animal Crossing, no stupid Dalgona coffee,
no memes,
just the wall, just no memes.
Yeah, you have limited access to a radio. You have limited access to a TV. You have limited access
no podcasts.
I know. You can't do anything. Like, I can only imagine it. It's fucking wild. It's always so interesting when you look at stuff like that and, like, the prison system in, say, Sweden. How it's a lot about reform and things like that. People get, like, gaming systems and stuff like that. And how some people are like, no! So mad about it.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting to, like, now having not even remotely a similar situation, but having some form of isolation imposed upon you where you're not allowed to do what you want to do. You're just like, oh, this kind of sucks. I can only even begin to have an idea of what it must be like to have all those liberties taken away.
Mm.
Wild.
Sources before I forget. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
It's getting so hot in the cupboard. All right.
Somebody let her out from under the stairs.
So The Crime Library by Mark Gribben, his article in there was amazing. CriminalMindsFandom.com.
Ooh.
Murderpedia, Wikipedia. Murder by Gaslight, which is a guy who just does... he blogs about like all like, you know, the gaslight murders, so like murders in America back in the day. Great read.
Ooh.
And then Harold Scheiter, Fiend, Shocking True Story of America's Youngest Serial Killer, is amazing. Very, very good deep dive. Does a lot more description than me. And I had 9 pages worth of shit. So...
Oh my gosh. A journey.
Well done.
Yeah. So...
That was highly enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fucking
He's
wild.
a prick, eh?
Yeah.
So he only killed 2 people, but he is considered a serial killer. It's really interesting.
He has confessed to a total of 27. So...
27.
Do they have evidence?
So these kids were the white ones.
Right. Oh.
There it is.
And also, because there's a lot of
Okay.
times where because he's normally like pretty much like every 2 months something happens, right? And then there's these big blocks of time where there's nothing, where people are like, oh no, he definitely did something through here, but we just don't know what.
Right. And it was probably someone that nobody at the time would have been too bothered about. That's so sad.
So if he definitely had more victims.
Okay. Wow.
Either just like from like his torture thing, or if he killed someone. I mean, Katie wasn't
Right.
found for 3 months and she was in their house. So if he'd stuffed somebody somewhere else, they might have never been found, or if they were found, you know, you wouldn't be able to tell what happened to them.
Yeah.
If it's just like, you know, bones or whatever. But yeah, so they think he's got a lot more. There's a lot more theories and things like that in that guy's book as well, as to
That's
who else was a
super
possible
interesting.
victim. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I'm so interested.
Grizzly.
Time to go buy that book.
Yeah.
Time to go and refill my birth control
Yes.
prescription.
Don't have kids. No COVID-19 babies.
Thank you.
They could turn out like these ones.
No.
Oh. Can you imagine
God.
the population boom we're going to get?
We are. It's going to be a high divorce rate and a high new births rate. Oh my gosh.
I'm just learning that JD and I just need the rabbit
Yeah.
to not,
buffer.
like, to be happy. That's all we really need. We've just sort of been bopping around the house with the rabbit and just turning to each other every so often and being like, he's so cute. And the other one would be like,
Aw.
I know! That's all
Oh,
we need.
that's so sweet. My heart's very full.
It's really lame. I did get really emotional last night watching the speech from one of the husbands of the 4 police officers that were killed this week.
Yeah.
That was so sad. That was absolutely awful.
Just an awful time.
That guy, the Porsche Dick Poussey.
Yeah, his name is Dick Pussy.
Yeah. Fuck that guy. He
Yeah.
is a horrible person. Yeah. Big unhappy with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
God, it's awful.
1,000 curses on his house.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not into him. Not into him
And
at
all the
all.
houses before and all the houses after. Fuck you.
Yep.
Just to reiterate, if you didn't heed our warnings at the start and you did listen and you are feeling a bit uncomfy, a little bit gross, a little bit upset, please reach out to someone. Beyond Blue, Headspace, all the good stuff.
I bleach on Reddit.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Look at like
Yes.
just lots of puppies.
Even, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent subreddit.
Yes. Please look after yourselves, both in isolation and outside
Yep.
of isolation.
Yeah, exactly. Take
Yeah.
good care of yourselves. Keep in touch with each other. Zoom is funny. Real funny.
Yeah.
You should try it.
You can make your background the Bon Appetit test kitchen. I highly recommend it.
Me and a few friends have been doing drag makeup on Zoom, just getting a bit drunk and doing
so good.
some big outrageous makeup because we have a lot of expensive makeup
I
that
would
is
love
not getting used right now.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty.
Well, I'm
The
done
Weird
with
Sisters
you.
podcast coming to
Yes.
you from a cupboard near you. I need to get out of here.
Yes.
So bad,
You can find-
guys.
Calm down, Harry Potter.
No.
Yeah. Please visit us on our socials, weirdsisтерspodcast.com. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Goodbye, hags!
Goodbye.